I'm here today to talk about orange wine. It's not a mimosa in a glass. This is very different. So the term orange wine was first deemed by David Harvey, a very famous wine importer from Britain. I don't think he realized that coining that phrase would become such a hotbed of kind of wine hipsterdom. It's a category of wines that needs a lot of explanation. It's not made from oranges. This is macerated wine, skin contact wine, amber wine. So the difference you'll find first off between white wine and red wine is how the juice is separated from the skins, and then at what point the skins get put back on the juice. So red wine, you put skin contact to get color, to get pigment, to get histamines, to get tannic structure. White wine, often they'll just get rid of the grape skins entirely, and at that point they've got a clarified white wine. But in the case of orange wine, or macerated wine, skin contact wine, amber wine, they use the skins for another separate kind of maceration time. And at that point, you change the color compound, a lot of oxidation can happen, and you take this wine to a whole different level. This is traditional from the Caucasus originally, what is now modern day like Armenia and the Republic of Georgia. Some people estimate there's a 5,000 to 7,000 year tradition of this style of wine being made. Now, there they do it very differently than we see in modern day, and they've really been kind of forging the way that people nowadays will go back to making this old style of wine. They use qvevri, which is a big amphora that's buried into the ground, and in order to keep out as much oxidation as possible, they would use stones and beeswax to seal the little top. Today you see the skin contact wine, orange wine, made all over the world. It's very popular in northern Italy, Slovenia, Croatia, Austria, Australia. You see some in Germany. Here in America, it's become very popular and really becoming a global craze in everyone's Instagram feed, all over the place, and it's something that I'm very passionate about. Really, the last 20 years have been a place of innovation, and I would say in the marketplace, orange wines have exploded over the last 5 years, and right now, every wine bar in America who knows what they're doing will have at least one, probably sometimes up to like 5 of them. The biggest difference between orange wine and rosé wine is the fact that rosé wine uses red grapes traditionally to make the rosé in a very short skin contact time, sometimes as little as an hour, up to maybe a couple days, depending on the place and the tradition. But orange wine uses white grapes traditionally. Now, sometimes they'll sneak in a little red here and there, just depending on what they have in their vineyard. But for the most part, we're seeing people using grapes that do give a little bit of skin contact color, like Pinot Gris. Sometimes Riesling will have a little bit of an effect on color. You're seeing a lot of Pinot Blanc, a little bit of Chardonnay, some Sauvignon Blanc, some Semillon. In the kind of Adriatic area, whatever grapes are local, like Ribolla Gialla, things like that. Wines that can also give a stabilization and are known to have tannic structure as well. So when you're gonna order an orange wine, the sort of flavor profiles you can expect would be things like honey, apples, big time apple interpretation. You get a lot of stone fruit, peaches, apricot. Then you get other kind of tertiary qualities. You'll get some dirt sometimes. You maybe sometimes an opportunity of glue, which is kind of a fun thing. You see it a lot in Chenin Blanc, and it finds its way into orange wines as well. Depending on the style, depending on how long the skin contact will be, you can also find varying levels of tannic structure. So a lot of people who love tannic structure, orange wine is a good place to go as well. So traditionally, you would not see a lot of oak used in orange wine. I think in northern Italy, kind of the Venezia Giulia area, and sometimes in Slovenia, you might find someone who likes to do like large oak casks. But for the most part, the new mindset is much more for freshness, and also they're becoming very popular, so people are drinking them quickly. Oak aging a lot of times will create a longer time in cellar, and that's not necessarily good for the commerce of orange wine now. The demand is far outweighing the supply, so we're seeing people trying to turn them over quickly. Orange wine is meant to drink young for the most part. You can age some of the more kind of tannic ones. I think they develop nicely, but a lot of times these wines are meant to drink young. So it's all about the wines, right? Let's dive into some. Here we've got a really beautiful wine by Valentina Passalacqua. Great winemaker down in Puglia, kind of the heel of the boot of Italy. This is made from Falanghina, and 5 days on the skins doesn't seem like a long time, but you can see there's a really dense color. This place is very volcanic. The wines are very expressive. You find this kind of tertiary quality, minerality, flintiness, smoky, and then just this waft of peach fruit and tree fruit and apricot, and just, it's such an amazing aroma. Patrick Sullivan, originally from Victoria, Australia, but these grapes coming from Margaret River. He calls it G-Dub. It's 100% Semillon, as they call Semillon in Australia. And this guy does no filtration. His wines are much more alive, funky. There's no reason to take anything out of the bottle. It's all as the earth meant for it to taste like. You find weird tea-like aromas and really like the kind of funk that you don't tend to find nowadays, you find in Patrick Sullivan's opportunities. The filtration choice, in this case no filtration, is why the wine is so cloudy, and you see this kind of like almost electric color to it. You know, there's yeast that's there, there's whatever fermentation byproduct happened, he doesn't want any of that to leave the wine. So this is something that's a full of the earth experience that you get to have. So we're gonna move now to Slovenia. Keltis is a great winery. They call this wine Zon. They use a couple grapes I had never heard of for this wine, one being Rumere Plevek. You'll see a little Riesling, little Muscat Autunel. I love this label. It's one of my favorites of all time. And this is like peach rings, aromatic, but then on the palate, it takes you in a place you don't expect. It's very tannic and very like aggressive on the palate while being very pretty in the nose. All right, Meinklang, great Austrian winery. They have a steer farm. They're big on their beef. These people care so much about biodynamics. So for them, it's all one organism. Everyone lives together, breathes together. Really, the Angus and what they have cattle-wise helps the vineyard and vice versa. These guys don't wear shoes in their vineyard. They don't want to bring any sort of potential to ruin with phylloxera. They, in fact, don't wear shoes at all. It's kind of awesome. They make really beautiful wines up and down kind of where the Neusiedl Lake is in Austria and Burgenland. And they make awesome red wines. They make great pet nats, but I think their skin contact wines are really the standouts. So we've talked a lot about the wines. Now let's taste them. So we'll start in Slovenia. Keltis, Zon. Aromatically, I really love the structure of this wine. It's got a lot of peach rings, kind of those, you know, Haribo German candies that are just sugar and peach and just so kind of childhood-like. It brings me back really to my childhood. Then there's a lot of chamomile. Tea qualities are something you see a lot in these skin contact wines and orange wines. It's so intoxicating. I mean, I love drinking it, but I just want to smell it all day. There's a little bit of like a forest. There's a little bit of, when you're close to a pine forest. Also a little bit of varnish, which I really love. I mean, as a kid, I always loved when someone would like clean up something wood related with varnish. I know it's not good for you, but I would huff it and it just made me, it brings me right back to that place. Definitely varnish, definitely old school wood. But on the palate, it's much more, it's aggressive given the way the nose feels. So you find a tannic structure that really lasts, and I love it. I think it's really fun for food and really kind of an interesting opportunity to take this kind of wine. Yes, you can have it for cocktail, but you can also move it into a more culinary aspect. So in the case of skin contact wine where they're using Riesling, I think a lot of times they're doing it for the aromatic lift, not necessarily for the flavor profile. That flavor profile is gonna get buried, I think, or I know, from the way that the tannic structure kind of overbears that. But you really do get this kind of aromatical, a pop that you get from Riesling. There's some orange oil, there's some lemon lime, there's some those kind of traditional things you would get aromatically from Riesling. I could drink a whole bottle of that. Oh, so good. All right, so Meinklang, amazing winery. Their wines are so aromatic, so fragrant. They're known as biodynamic farmers, something they care a lot about. They really do get this kind of like, I don't know, the wines really remind me of being in Austria. When you see all the trees that are there, the foliage, it's more like a, almost Herbe de Provence, kind of countryside. This is not a specific fruit bomb. It's a little bit more of like the Garrigue, you know, almost like the way Austrians are, a little bit more austere. And I love Austrians. It's definitely got some like peach underlying qualities, a little bit of orange oil. But then on the palate, let's see what we got. There should be a lot more minerality. So the acid on this wine is really powerful, really strong, really clean. But you get much more of like a limestone influence, and they're very well known for their limestone. And actually the wine is named after the German word for limestone. So it's very precise, very clean. The acidity is, it's got a lot of carry to it. It's got a lot of length, but it's not as fruity on the palate as the nose would make you think. A little bit more stony, a bit more like, being by the riverside. I want to drink the whole bottle of that too. Delicious. So the Mein Klang is made from Pinot Gris, Welsch Riesling, and Traminer. And that's why you get this kind of aromatic quality to it, but also that tea quality, that more minerality. It's from really limestoney soils, so the wine is definitely more on the linear side and less on the big opulent aromatic side. So in the world of wine now with so many options, we tend to even drink what we're familiar with, things that we know we like. And orange wine is an opportunity where maybe you don't want a red wine, maybe it's hot out, maybe you're bored of your old Pinot Gris, Sauvignon Blanc kind of fallback. And orange wine's a new opportunity for a lot of us, and we get to go down a whole new flavor profile that you would not otherwise find in wine.